for creative, and where we found success was really on creating. It was like not in the ideas of things, right? Like it's on the execution of like getting something done. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be in the world, because lots of people have ideas and lots of people like think about things all the time. And the social media, like that's how we built it. And it's still how we continue to fish, so to speak. It's sharing work that we've done to entice other people to want the same. You know, we make a video about a drink recipe and a gin company is like, I want that. Like that looks like something that could help me sell my gin. So, you know, there's an investment in yourself as much as you are creating. You kind of have to create first what you want and expect to hopefully create for someone else.
If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment about the episode. And if you're watching on Spotify or listening on a traditional podcast platform, please follow, rate us 5 stars, and leave a review if you would be so kind. Thank you. Welcome to the What I Know You podcast, Season 2, Episode 27. My name is Nick Rounds, and I will be your host. My next guest is the CEO and co-founder of Visual Country, a video production agency based out of New York City and Toronto that partners with global brands. Known for their stop-motion animation and live-action ads, from liquor to Lowe's, from fashion to furniture, from barbecue sauce to Samsung, the creative team at Visual Country has made an ad that you've probably seen. Additionally, my guest is a serial entrepreneur, a mom, and a jet-setter. When she's not busy closing the next deal for her company, she's busy spending quality time with her son. Amber Lee, wait, I know you. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. It's an honor to have you on. Such a huge fan of your company and everything that you've done. Everybody in your creative team is fantastic. Like every time I see a new ad from Visual Country, I'm always blown away at just how creative your team is. And in addition to talking about that today and diving into why Visual Country is such an awesome company, I want to learn more about you and your background and share it with my audience. So,
cool. Well, thank you for all those nice words.
To continue the nice words. So my first question, so Visual Country, it's not your first foray into video or advertising and marrying both. Can you talk about your formative years and how they kind of set you up for success now, and specifically how your passion for marrying art and commerce came to be?
Yeah, I think when I left high school, I thought I went into film. That was what I initially went into. And I was like, I'm going to be a filmmaker. And honestly, I slept through most of that first year. And I just wasn't really as much into the making of films as I expected to be. And so I switched pretty quickly into business. And that's really where I found, because I still loved the world of filmmaking and TV and ads. Like I always loved these worlds, and like I watched the Super Bowl for the ads, you know.
Same.
So it was an easy switch. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go into business and I'll learn how to make money from these things. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't really know what I want to create or how to create it. But at least I'll know how to like monetize it and maybe like make a living from it. Because there's always that saying of like the starving artist and stuff. So it's like, what's the cure to that? And for me, it was a business degree. So that's kind of like where it initially started. But I went into tech, I worked for Anheuser-Busch InBev out of school. And so I was not in like the ad world really at all. They wanted me to be in sales and all this stuff. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this.
I don't want to deal with beer. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, it just wasn't a fit. So I escaped and moved to New York. And that's really New York opened up a whole lot of opportunity and excitement for me. Like I came from a smaller city in Canada to New York. So but again, I was still in tech for like a really long time. And even before this, I was at eBay and I was in something very different. I was managing operations for a same day delivery service, eBay Now. Like nothing related to advertising or making commercials or anything like that.
Right.
And, but I did like previous to that, I had an agency where Meagan and I worked together. And that was kind of the beginning of where I was like helping manage her as an artist and
Meagan,
trying to figure out Meagan Cignoli,
your co-founder and Vine star.
Yeah, of Visual Country and partner at Visual Country. And really like the creative force behind Visual Country and the vision of it and why it looks and feels the way that it does today. And it was my first time working with her. And at that point, I was kind of coming on to be a manager to her. Like we were together, like she was my girlfriend, but we were both helping each other. I thought I was going to be a musician and I was going to be I would get famous writing songs and singing songs. That did not happen.
You're on Spotify though, right?
I am. Yeah, I did record an album. Like I got like, I gave it a good go.
Nice.
And but again, I think I was better suited on the production end of it. Like I really enjoyed making the album and like doing all that stuff. But so we were kind of like, I was helping her with her photography at the time, and she was helping me try to make me famous on the internet.
As one does.
As one does, yeah. Yeah, so that was kind of really where it came. A lot of it developed out of that.
Gotcha. You touched on talking about how film kind of kicked things off, but didn't end up being a great fit. But I'm curious, like, what are some films that like really stick with you or kind of inspired you to chase after filmmaking specifically at first?
My favorite movie growing up was Beaches. It still is Beaches.
Nice.
I love the music. I love the storytelling. I love Bet.
Tiny Mayim Bialik and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And Clueless was also one of my favorites, which I think like probably a lot of people think those. And then Love Story was like another favorite, which is like an oldie, but a goodie. Like I love rom-coms and like romantic things and definitely things with a little bit of like tragedy to them. But and really it was like TV. I loved TV though. Like I think more than anything, TV was where I fell in love first. And really that was what I wanted to do, was like be on a set or be on a show or like I just wanted to be in this world, like I didn't know exactly how, but I wanted to like be among it.
I know you're a huge fan of crime dramas and specifically like lawyer shows and legal stuff. Are there any other genres that you're super passionate about, or is that a majority of the stuff that you nerd out on?
I nerd out on anything. I've gone through everything murder on Netflix to this point that I'm now like I've already gone through the dubbed versions of things, like from every country, all the podcasts. I'm really into this. But there's this new podcast that I'm really into called Normal Gossip. That's quite fun and not about murder mysteries, but it is about fun, harmless, fairly harmless gossip. Like everything. So.
Awesome. I always end up having to ask guests about film stuff because anytime they mention film stuff, because I'm a film school dropout and I love nerding out with people about film in general, and so always seeing what their favorite stuff is. So thank you for entertaining that question.
You're welcome. It's definitely not like a film buff answer.
No, I'm not a gatekeeper or a snob. If you're into movies, you're into movies or film and TV. Like there should be no gatekeeping about that at all.
Yeah. I think sometimes I'm curious about my filter for liking things. I'm like, I like so many things.
That's not a bad thing at all. So you rattled off some of your background, and you have quite an impressive resume prior to Visual Country, hence a serial entrepreneur, and quite an impressive journey. Can you talk about some of the important lessons that you learned and challenges that you faced at some of your early startups and companies? Like specifically, if like there was any specific challenges where like it really kind of reinforces who you are today, or like it was such an important lesson that like going forward, it's almost like when you touch a stove for the first time and you're like, never touch a stove again, it hurts. If you had an experience like that at a company or a startup where you're like, wow, I'm really going to learn a lot from that one.
Right.
Do you have any examples like that?
I think, yeah, I guess like early on when I was at eBay, there was a period where one of my tasks was to like build up a big team, which I did, but then like we had to like quickly unbuild that team. And I think that for me was that feeling and having to like go through that, it was just like, I don't want to put myself or other people through that if I can avoid it. And some of these things are just unavoidable, you know, like it's business and you need to make changes. But I've always, for me, like when I'm thinking about the team and I'm thinking about the business stability for people within their role or like within the company, and trying to do that as much as I can, being like a small business, you know, self-funded. We don't have any like big companies coming in to write checks when things don't go as planned. But even still, like as we've grown through the years, it's always been like with some strong consideration and not like overextending ourselves as much as possible, to give ourselves like more freedom and I don't know, as much like confidence in a very unpredictable business.
Absolutely. And because it is mainly partnering with brands and advertising, it is kind of like project to project, right? More or less. And you're always kind of trying to spin up to the next thing. Yeah.
100%. We're just like a big freelancer. Like we just have to hustle, and we have a lot of clients that come back because we do good work, and people move on within this industry from like one place to the other, like agency to agency or company to company. And often they'll take with it their experience with VC and they'll come to us with like their new brand or their new agency. But at the end of the day, like it is projects and even if it's a bunch of content at once. So you're like constantly fishing as a creative for new business and new fish, bigger fish.
And that's specifically where you focus on, right? More or less is like closing deals, like the financial stuff and working with companies and kind of being the literal face of the company with most of the work that you do there.
Yeah, like I would say for most of the time, Meagan was the face of the company because she was the mastermind behind all the creative and running all of our social and driving a lot of that. And I was like the wizard behind the curtain for kind of making sure that we got paid and we weren't just like spending a bunch of money or doing these things for fun as they can be. And yeah, like getting new clients as well as helping manage the team that would take a project from the beginning stages all the way to the end. So there's a strong creative component, and especially now more than ever, I've stepped into like more of a creative role in addition to doing like a lot of the financial stuff. You know, we do work with like partners to help us on those things too. But
awesome. So entering the advertising field and specifically what you do is, you know, it's challenging to get where you are. And you just mentioned that you're still fighting every day and fishing rather, you know, to continue and keep the company alive. So if somebody was starting in your field today or starting in Visual Country today, for example, what advice would you offer them, given everything that you already know and everything you've experienced?
I think that as a creative, at the beginning, if you're someone starting out, it would be different advice than someone that maybe is like developed. But especially if you're starting out, I think finding like what your strength is. Like there's some period of experimenting and discounting your services and just like building a book that you feel like you can go and sell. And you'll kind of see it in someone's Instagram feed. Like that's a creative, like they have kind of these random posts and then all of a sudden they like hit a rhythm with a style. And you can kind of tell, like if you look back, you can see when it happened. And maybe that's because you got a lot of good feedback on it, or you got posts that did well. But for creative, and where we found success was really on creating. It was like not in the ideas of things, right? Like it's on the execution of like getting something done. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it does need to be in the world, because lots of people have ideas and lots of people like think about things all the time. But the people that are out there posting often and getting feedback and then adjusting to that feedback, I think are the people that you see like emerge to the top. Like they get shared more, their content starts to feel more like sometimes similar, to the point that you're like, okay, another video like this. But at the same time, you're like, but I like it. But I like this video. So it works. And there, social media, like that's how we built it, and it's still how we continue to fish, so to speak. It's sharing work that we've done to entice other people to want the same. You know, we make a video about a drink recipe, and a gin company is like, I want that. Like that looks like something that could help me sell my gin. So, you know, there's an investment in yourself as much as you are creating. You kind of have to create first what you want and expect to hopefully create for someone else. And you just, no matter how far along you get, you have to keep doing it.
So you touched on the fact that advertising for social media specifically is super important, and none more important than 2022 and beyond. I read previously from like a previous interview that Meagan had kind of noted that video seemed to be like the way that trends were going specifically, and now in the land of 2022 and TikTok and Instagram getting trolled because they're prioritizing video and everybody's mad about it. And of course, advertisements taking over social media and everything. You can't get away from it, for better or worse. Yeah. How would you describe the social media advertising landscape, both as a consumer and also somebody who dabbles in it professionally? What are some of the things you have to consider now compared to a couple of years ago?
I think, honestly, even a couple of years ago, it's probably like not too dissimilar. Before, you know, but a long time ago, you used to be able to, of course, like rely on organic content and like shareability.
Right.
I think there's still the same things there's still some of the things that we used back then that are helpful. And a lot of that's like collaboration. So like getting in front of a new audience, partnering or sharing your work through other accounts, whether that's like, you know, another artist or like people that share work like that. But there are like platforms like TikTok where they have like a really strong algorithm and discovery engine that's similar to Vine, which is where we came up out of. Virality is like, it's like the American dream right now. It's like, can you build an audience? Like, I feel like every person in one way or another, maybe not everyone, some people are like, you know, very much opposed to building an audience for themselves and want to remain that way. But I think there is like a strong desire to like create an audience because it opens doors for you. Like, just like the brands are on social because that's where the people are, and they're just going to go where the people are. And obviously these companies, you know, opened up opportunity to then promote through it. So like, there's going to be you have to invest not only in time, but there is like money to it. Like, social media is definitely not a free platform as much as like you can sign up for it for free. You know, I think at this point on social, you need to think about it as a media platform like any other, where there's kind of like this loss, or there's not loss leader. It's kind of like this, what would be like a freemium model where you come on and you can kind of like play. Right. We'll give you a certain amount of organic reach. Maybe you can like hack the system with a lot of work, you know, like with a lot of work, you can kind of like, it's a full-time job though. Like, growing an audience on social is in and of itself a full-time job to keep up with it. But, and that's the other thing, is that it's like, you have to, whatever you start doing, you need to know that you need to continue doing it. Like, so you have to kind of set reasonable expectations. I don't think you need to be posting every single day. to build an audience. But I think you do need to create content that people want to watch and share. And probably shorter is better. Like, people want to hear what you have to say a little bit less than you do yourself. So like, edit yourself down. I know it's hard, but like, you're very charming, but maybe a little less so than you think.
Of course.
So
Sorry, I wasn't trying to live edit you just now, just by the way.
No, I'm taking my own advice and I'm cutting myself off.
No, it's good. I mean, you're the star of the show. This is a long form conversation. I'm here to dig into your company and you personally, but you touched on something interesting, talking about like how collaborating with people and trying to reach out to different audiences, and then Visual Country kind of kicked off with Vine specifically. I'm curious, beyond the actual ads and brands specifically, because, you know, the people just normally watching on Vine and watching what your company does on Vine or any social media platform now, what's kind of the audience that came to you initially versus what kind of audience do you attract now? I'm just curious, like, what is your demographic of the people that like really love and interact with your stuff, with exception of me, obviously?
I think it's a lot of the same people. Like, there's a lot of people that transferred over from Vine into Instagram. I think they're people that are interested in production of it, you know, ads, but also people that just like, you know, the videos themselves are fun to watch. And so people that are looking for fun, light content are gonna, you know, artful content, will look to it. And certainly like video is now more of a priority, but it wasn't always. And so there weren't a lot of people that were doing videos, and there's not a ton of people still. I mean, there's a lot now, more than there were, but video is a tough place because it's not an easy place to create content for that's good. And that can be lo-fi or hi-fi. I'm not talking, you know, there's tons of like great content that's like lo-fi. But either way, it's just like, it's more media to manage and edit and create a story around. So yeah, I think we have had success in it by trying to keep it short, trying to keep it entertaining. What's like the whimsy of it? What's the charm? Like, what's the humor? What's that like aha moment that people can, that maybe is a little unexpected, or maybe it's mesmerizing? Like, what are these things that keep people engaged?
So you touched on the fact that, you know, or we all touched on the fact rather, stop motion video is more or less kind of where Visual Country started and what Meagan started doing with you, in terms of like kicking off the company, with the exception of like Robot Chicken, Studio Leica. There's not very many people that are chasing after stop motion animation, and that really sets you and your company apart. But it's not without mentioning, obviously, that it's a lot of work, especially if you're doing it initially more or less by yourselves in an apartment and being super scrappy. So thinking about those early days compared to now, are there any particular shoots that were extremely challenging and or extremely rewarding?
Yeah, there's been, I think the early days, they were challenging because like technology wasn't really there to support it. So we were like creating these videos on a phone. You couldn't review the content. You couldn't save it. You hoped it didn't crash. You hope you spent 17 hours and it actually went live, you know. You didn't have to do it all again, because there were many times that happened. So those are like early days challenges. But like now, sometimes the challenge is to like get back to like scrappy, you know, you get to like a level of perfectionism and other things. But yeah, stop motion, it takes a good amount of time to do for sure. There's been some shoots that were really fun where we've had, you know, 5-6 people animating. Bellagio, we used to do a bunch of these videos for them where we would animate their bee. They have this very iconic bee for their logo. And, you know, we did one that was all flowers that made up this bee. One was like all food and like, you know, like nice food. It was like lobsters and caviar and like other things, and ended up being like really quite big. I think it was like 10 by 10 feet to create this bee. But these, it took like a lot of people and probably at least like 16 hours of shooting to get this really cute, fun 10, 15-second video in the end. But it's rewarding in the end to watch it play back. I think it has like a strong appeal in that way for sure.
Is this it?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. I'm like, we have it. Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think it goes. I haven't seen this in a while.
Awesome.
Yeah, we did one that was like tiles. So we like cracked all these, hundreds and hundreds of pieces of tiles, maybe thousands, I have no idea. And animated it into this big bee. But yeah, stop motion's fun. And the stuff that we did before, I think like it started with very like fun vines, right? These like 6-second looping videos, really low branding in terms of like an advert goes. And then now it's like TD ads, or out of home, it's like end cards and supers and voiceover, and like very much an ad. We still try to bring like the same, or apply like the same methods, which is like entertainment, right? Like focusing on entertaining people, and not, because I think if you can entertain them, they'll stick around and they'll watch what you're selling. But you really only have like a few seconds, like kind of a blink, to get them there. And if they don't see something that they like right away, it's, hard for them to not just like move on to the next thing. But yeah, I think stop motion is fun for that, because you can tell a story very quickly, that's still very detailed and like has a little punch in it. And there's always a little bit of like, how did you do that? Like, how did that happen? That people like, I think.
Yeah, I think one thing that always sticks with me about, you guys can always pivot to whatever feels right for you, but I think something I've noticed in terms of like some of my favorite ads that your company has done are typically taking an ordinary object, transferring it to stop motion animation, so that it is not just a ordinary object that somebody else has to pick up, that it actually moves by itself or does something interesting or out of the ordinary that you kind of take for granted in any other medium. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's magical about the way that your company tends to interpret things, is that you find the wonder and whimsy of ordinary objects and then make it magical and entertaining in a stop motion way, and also with live video as well. The amount of intention and attention to detail that your company outputs just always blows me away. Everybody, yourself included, and everybody in your creative team, I'm always blown away at the type of ads that you create, and it really inspires me just to see such a fun and playful thing that just happens to be selling me an ad.
Well, thank you. That's very sweet. And certainly, like, sometimes we are perfectionists to a fault, not entirely, but like, we are intentional about the details of things, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it, even for a live action, even for a photograph. The shots are very thought out. They're treated, they have a treatment, or they have boards and mock-ups to them at this point, like all the time. Before, it was like in the Vine days, in the early days, in like 2013, it was the Wild West, and we couldn't even save, like I mentioned. So there was no opportunity to like think about things to that degree, and it just wasn't really what we were selling. But now it's like very campaign driven work. These are supposed to be assets that like work hard for you to create, brand attention or conversion or whatever it might be. And often now the campaigns involve like, it is stills and GIFs and video and cut downs and all the version, like, all the different specs, wide, square, vertical, to get it as far and wide as you can in a way. And when you're doing that, when you're putting all that time into it, it's easy to art direct that into like a bad place. Like, it's very easy to like over knead the dough, so to speak. And it's just like kind of not nice in the end. But but I think it's still like necessary as well to like be intentional and kind of get into the voice and the mind of these brands, and like not trying to reinvent them, because they're not looking to us to reinvent them. I would, if they did say that, I would be like, I think we're not maybe that's not exactly what we do here. So like, and go reinvent yourself, and then come back and we'll help you execute that invention. But and we do a lot of writing still. Like we do a lot of the ideas behind things, and the story behind it. But it's always in like the context of what the brand needs. And what we think as well will be an artful approach to it that will help it also like be impactful and be successful. And so we do like pay a lot of attention to social and what's happening on there. At least I know I do for sure. And the team as well, to like, and to keep up with like, I don't know, what are the trends, even if we're not even participating in them necessarily. We want to like see how things are being used. And, you know, there is on TikTok, how you approach things would be a little bit different. Like TikTok is more not DIY, but like user generated. Like, you know, they don't want things to be, it's a safe space for people to not feel like they need to be super polished and like buttoned up. And so the brands need to like also like, you know, let loose as much as like one can let loose as a brand. Yeah.
I follow Duolingo on TikTok, and the Duo Ow on TikTok is some of the most unhinged TikTok content that I've ever seen.
Right.
The fact that the word duo ussy happened in a normal social media post, that they had that Duo had a baby with Scrub Daddy. Like, there's so many weird things that happen on an account, but they just get away with it because they keep going viral every time Duo posts like a really unhinged TikTok.
Right.
So
like the unexpected there is so important, and it's like a vulnerability, right? Like, and sometimes that can go wrong. It's sometimes hard to like see how that joke doesn't look great, or that, you know, is like cringy or something.
Yeah, they definitely got some blowback for some of that stuff, and they've kind of dialed it back a little bit. But the counter argument is that their account blew up after that. But
no, for sure. And that's like, you know, I remember years ago we did this video for Timex, and it was like a GoPro video, and we went in a helicopter and we had someone on a trapeze, and it was these transitions, you know, like your hands transitioning from a beach scene to a helicopter scene, and like at a GoPro on your head type of like vantage point, and you're looking at your wrist, right? Like your watch. But this was like GoPro in like 2013. And so like, it's not like a great quality video. It's not like we have an Alexa Mini like strapped to our head and we're just like flying through the air with it. And so we like gave it to them, and they were kind of like not happy about what it looked like, right? You know, they're like, oh, it's like so green. It's like not like, what is this shot at kind of thing. But then we posted it to Vine, and it got like 1 million plays. And that was like, you know, overnight kind of thing, like within a couple of days of posting it. Cause that's really, you know, you hit at that point, like you hit or you don't hit like pretty quick, at least on Vine and at that time.
Right.
And it's like, at first they were like, maybe not even going to use it. And I'm like, okay, well, I think it's cool. And I think that people are going to think it's cool. And so sometimes like, you know, sometimes those imperfections are what make people, it's endearing, you know, it's like what makes people allow themselves to get connected to that brand. Because if we all like presented such a polished demeanor at all times, I mean, there's certain brands that, I mean, that's their thing, you know, like that's their shtick. Like we are the people that are like, and you know, some makeup and luxury brands are like exactly that. They're selling in an image. So it's like, okay, cool. But like, if you're not that, then there's definitely, and even still, there's in your own like style an opportunity to relax a little and like be vulnerable. You know, you don't have to be offensive to be vulnerable,
right?
As well. So
I thought that was interesting, the fact that you have this like really polished, well, not polished, you know, you have the grainy GoPro, and that the GoPro doesn't want it, but then you post it to social media, and then suddenly everybody goes bananas. I think there's something to mention there specifically about the amount of quality and effort that went into it on like a smaller platform, or just like a platform where people aren't doing that at all. It's kind of funny how you do that and you post that where nobody else is doing that. Again, you're doing something no one else is doing, so it grabs a ton of attention. And I think that's a really important and interesting lesson. So yeah, definitely thank you for sharing that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I think like the thing is that you don't need the best. I think we haven't built a business on like the top of the line camera or the best equipment or whatever, and I think that's subjective too. We built it on storytelling. Like, I think that's what's really, certainly there's absolutely an understanding and attention to the aesthetics of something or how something looks. It is certainly, I think, well packaged and presented, whatever style and direction it's in. But it's really that with any of these budgets, whether it's small or big, you kind of like approach it very similarly, or I think you should, like, there should be like an idea here. Like when someone's like, oh, we'll figure that out on set, or, we'll kind of like throw it in or try a few different things. I'm like, this is not improv, like we're coming in with a script. Like we have,
right.
Even if there's no words to this, there's scripts, because especially in these days that are like shoot days, if you have a big crew or regardless, every minute, every hour is like very expensive to be sitting around writing, or conceptualizing or creating a set or whatever it is. Like you should know what the pieces are and where they go. And like, so that you can, by the time you get to the edit, no matter what medium you're in, there's like not, certainly there's some story that you can evolve there in the edit, especially in live action, even in some stop motion stuff too. But like, by and large, the story has been like thought through, like anything that is an improvisation from that point on is probably like good and positive and something we maybe just couldn't have known or thought of at the time. Right. It's like, okay, go with it. Like you don't have to be so strict that you can't take your footage and apply it in different ways than maybe what you wrote. But you need to know how like every minute of your shoot day is going to like go, whether it's you and your friends doing it for free or whether it's, with a huge, 40-man crew and a lot of money put into it.
Measure twice, cut once. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Measuring.
So I guess last nerdy question about Visual Country. Do you do any consumer research? Is that something that the brand brings to you? Because I know obviously that you're coming up with general ideas about the brand and how to interpret it, but I'm curious, what kind of user research does your company do for products specifically, if it's not an inside secret?
Yeah, it's not a secret, but
Okay.
a lot of the brands, like, we're not a strategy agency, so we're not like creating your main message or like your main
Right.
like brand identity. We're here to like actualize it or implement it and be directed by it. And it's not to say that there's not choices that can be made in that, because there are, but the brands would be like setting those boxes, and it's questions that we would ask if they haven't. And we do, I think it's a little bit to the point of like keeping up with trends and like what's happening and what people like are doing on social, is that we can apply it from, hey, we've done this for a lot of brands. This is our world. We follow like ads basically and the storytelling of products in a short amount of time. So we'll consult and apply our expertise from that level. But like we would look to the brands to say like, we would never put our brand in this position, or it would never be used like this, or this is like, that we're never going to say, oh, you're going after 20-year-olds and let's write this like really, Gen Z, like, or I don't even know how old Gen Z is, but like young, younger people. Right. We're not going to tell you that you're writing for that. And certainly if you tell us that you're writing for like, a millennial family with young kids, we're not going to write it like a Gen Z. We're not going to be doing like TikTok dances necessarily, like it's like same way, like they're not going to like apply, we're not going to apply the trend of someone that's young to in a way necessarily, or in the same way at least. Like you have to style and write to the audience. And you don't, like, brands, you know, sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, like, we want your ideas, and like, and to some extent they do mean they want your ideas, but what it also means is they want their idea to be made, which is like fine, you know. Sometimes, like, usually they're like really great ideas, and we can expand on them and like make them come to life in a way that we feel like makes it, you know, improves upon it or helps like bring it, like amplify it in a way. But they're not usually looking for you to like come and like think so far outside the box, you know, on stuff. At least in my experience.
It's just barbecue sauce. You don't have to go crazy with it, but yeah.
But everyone, it's serious business.
It is serious business. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing all that with me. So now I want to talk to you about something, because I'm on the West Coast, you're on the East Coast, in New York specifically. You're natively from Canada, but you live and work in New York. So the West Coast definitely has its version of what tech and startup is, creative cultures, everything else. How would you describe the people and the passion that lives on the East Coast?
On the East Coast compared to like West Coasters?
Or even Canada, I guess, in general, like what is it like to live and work there, like especially among creatives
in New York?
Yeah.
It's definitely, I mean, New York is a hustle culture. It's like a work hard, play hard mentality. And you have to kind of like fight against that a little bit, or set boundaries with the city, so to speak, to keep them at bay. But because otherwise it will work you all hours, because like the city invites work. It's a work culture for sure. But it's, you know, I think that there's tons of really amazing creatives in New York, and now it's like everywhere, you know, like you can really create from so many places. But there is something about New York that's super special. And I still feel like I've met very few crew compared to like how many people in New York are like creating stuff, and there's always like something to be learned by them, by like the new people. But compared to like, I feel like they're more flexible than on the West Coast in a way. Like we just like want to create cool stuff, and yeah, I don't know. It's a little different than the West, but I love New York. I like LA too, or the West Coast as well.
Sometimes, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm natively from Northern California, so I have a love-hate relationship with Los Angeles. Like, there's parts of LA that I love. I love, you know, of course, tacos as well. Good Lord, the tacos. But yeah, creatively, it's definitely a different vibe because Hollywood's embedded there, and it's a little bit more less authentic, a little bit more, okay, what can you get me, as opposed to what can we do together and make something awesome. So yeah, it was interesting to hear you mention that. So what are things that are uniquely New York, you like that tongue twister, that you love and appreciate about the city? Beyond the hustle culture and drawing boundaries.
Yeah. I guess it's the walkability of the city, right? It's the access to things being so close, and somehow in a city of so many people that you can feel like you can hit like a little niche group, and it feels like high school almost, you know, or like neighborhoody, where you could go somewhere and you see the same faces. I think that's like an interesting dichotomy of the two, and something I love about New York. So yeah, and just you can find your people here. I think that's what's special about New York, is that no matter who you are and what you do, I think you can find your people in the city that want to like jam on the same thing and talk about the same thing and into the same things.
Are there anybody that like you're so glad that you met them, in terms of like your shared passion from living in New York, that you feel like sharing?
I mean, Meagan was that, like, you know, I think that we have created something very unique together and we worked really well together, like as far as like partnerships go, and we still do, you know. But as far as partnerships go, like we trusted each other's expertise and like, and kind of the vision of how we like focused ourselves within the company, and you know, respected each other and making some big decisions or hard decisions along the way. Like we had to really put a lot of trust and faith in each other that like we had the right idea, and we didn't always, you know, but we would adapt. And but she like opened up, you know, when I first met her, she was photographing and doing like fashion shoots, and I was like doing craft services and like helping her in any way to like produce them. And I was just so excited to be there, you know, like I was like, I mean, going to Fashion Week and all these things was like such a new and amazing experience that I saw on TV all the time, but was like super jazzed to be sitting like front row at a show, or like in any row really. And so it just like opened me up to this world that I like always loved, you know, the magazines or the TV show, like fashion television in Canada. And then here I was like having, as small or as big as the shoots may have been, and to see them like at certain points like get published and like have like a tangible thing that you touch that you helped create. And that, yeah, it was just like so, it was just a fun world, and I just like got a little addicted to it and wanted like more of it. So
yeah, it's a total pinch yourself moment of wait, how did I get here? Why am I at this party? Wait, what is happening right now? Who, that person's right there? Yeah, I can only imagine. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Visual Country is owned and led by women. And are there any companies led by women or non-binary folks that you think people should be more aware of, or just other people that you admire, like really inspire you?
Yeah, there's another stop motion shop that's owned by women that's called Mighty Oak, and they're in Brooklyn, and they do really fun stuff. A lot of like miniature worlds and character animations. There's, I don't know like any specific like non-binary places, but I mean we're 100% LGBT ourselves, and so I'm always like, if you know anyone, I'm always on the lookout for new shops to follow. But they're really great. I love Andrea Animates and her little felt animations that are super cute and stop motion and very addicting, and I know everyone here is like very wowed by them as well. So those are kind of my like two call outs.
Awesome. So I have one final softball question for you, and it's very serious. Are you ready?
Yes.
If you were a TV lawyer for one episode, what kind of case would you want to preside over?
Which one would I preside over? I would want something like really juicy, with like probably like corporate drama, you know, and like Suits. I was really into Suits for a while. Like I got like really, really into that. And so I would want to like have to be like running about the city, like investigating, you know, like there was some level of investigation, but it wasn't like I was going to get killed or anything. Like I didn't, but then maybe I would, or be at risk of at least. Like I thought it was all fun and games, but
then you get pushed off a building for learning too much. Da, da, da.
Yeah. And then I get recruited to FBI, and now I'm an agent with the FBI, and that's just like how it happens. It's just like the natural trajectory for me and my character.
That's hilarious. What did you start getting addicted to, like lawyer shows and law stuff and crime stuff? Like, did it start like super early for you, or did it kind of just, you just found yourself one day?
Yeah, like Ally McBeal and like all the Robert E. Kelly like shows that were like very lawyer based. And that probably was around the time that it started. I didn't really watch Law and Order then. I do now, but I didn't like, that wasn't it. I didn't get into The West Wing. I don't like politics. So I can't like really like, I mean, I like them enough to follow them enough, but they're not like a thing that I liked.
Right. For a TV show specifically. Yeah.
And it's just like so much fast talking, but I'm like, it's okay. You can breathe for a moment. I'm breathing in the dialogue. But yeah, like I loved all the Robert E. Kelly stuff, and he always has like at least a lawyer character and something like, and yeah, I just liked I think maybe I just like arguing and debating people and like having a platform to speak. I don't know. This like sounds, I think, but really like lawyer work, what I don't in reality, knowing people that are actually lawyers, is like the idea of counting how much I work by like 7-minute increments or whatever they do sounds so awful. I just like wouldn't want to be a lawyer based on having to like calculate how much my time costs.
Yeah.
People.
Yeah. Yeah. The counter argument to that, of course, is that a lawyer can charge you $200 to $500 just for responding to an email, let alone doing anything else. So
yeah. I know I would just probably never like add it all up, and I'd be like, it's fine. I can't. I'll send you an estimate. Just go on that.
Hilarious.
Too much work. Too much paperwork.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to sit in the courtroom and argue.
Not at all. Not at all. Amber, thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Is there anything else you'd like to plug before you leave? Perhaps Visual Country, social media sites, cool things happening in your life? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll plug the show that we've been working on at VC. It's a VC produced show. It's called Benny's Mini World, and it's stop motion. And we're on Instagram at Benny's Mini World, and you can check it out. And it's a little mini character that skateboards and cooks and builds stuff and does fun miniature things.
That's awesome. I'll make sure that's in the links in the description.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, no, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing so much about your journey and your company and everything else. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Everybody else, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.